Today I'm going over the section in Chapter 3 called Judgment and the Authority Problem, which always makes me laugh because I have been a rebel since the time I was born. And I have definitely always had an authority problem. Okay, we all have an authority problem. That's what this section is about. We have already discussed the last judgment, but in insufficient detail. So apparently the last time we covered the last judgment, it was not covered enough, according to Jesus. After the last judgment, there will be no more, meaning no more judgments. Judgment is symbolic because beyond perception, there is no judgment. When the Bible says, quote, "Judge not that ye be not judged," end quote, it means that if you judge the reality of others, you will be unable to avoid judging your own. Okay, so as soon as we judge others, we are judging ourselves because we're all connected. We are all one. The choice to judge rather than to know is the cause of the loss of peace. So the reason we don't feel peaceful here in this illusory world of duality is because we're judging. And judging causes the loss of peace. Judgment is the process on which perception, but not knowledge, rests. Because Jesus has been teaching us that perception is temporary, it's in the world of duality, and knowledge is in the world of permanency, of consistency. Judgment always involves rejection, always. It never emphasizes only the positive aspects of what is judged, whether in you or in others. What has been perceived and rejected or judged and found wanting remains in your mind because it has been perceived. So again, perception isn't true. It's not real. It's something the ego is using to defend against God's love, to defend against truth. One of the illusions from which you suffer is the belief that what you judged against has no effect. We want to believe that we can walk around judging things that it doesn't affect us, but it always does. This cannot be true unless you also believe that what you judged against does not exist. You evidently do not believe this, right? We don't believe that this world doesn't exist. We believe that it does exist. Or you would not have judged against it, right? This world is based on judgment. That's how we know that we think we're here is when we're judging. In the end, it does not matter whether your judgment is right or wrong. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what's happening or appears to be happening in this world. Either way, you are placing your belief in the unreal because everything in this world is unreal. It's not real. This cannot be avoided in any type of judgment because it implies the belief that reality is yours to select from. As long as we think we can pick and choose what reality is, we are mistaken. You have no idea of the tremendous release and deep peace that comes from meeting yourself and your brothers totally without judgment. When you recognize what you are and what your brothers are, you will realize that judging them in any way is without meaning. Okay, so everything in this world is meaningless. It has no meaning. In fact, their meaning is lost to you precisely because you are judging them. Okay, these are all twisty, turny words that mean that when we are perceiving incorrectly and we are judging, it's not real, we don't know what's real, and we're completely confused. All right? It's the act of judging that keeps us trapped in that world of confusion where we don't know what's true and what's real. So it's because we are judging things, it keeps us rooted in the ego thought system. All uncertainty comes from the belief that you are under the coercion of judgment. You do not need judgment to organize your life, and you certainly do not need it to organize yourself. In the presence of knowledge, all judgment is automatically suspended, and this is the process that enables recognition to replace perception. All right, fancy words to mean that once we stop judging and we stop perceiving from the world of separation, from the ego thought system, and we just allow the presence of knowledge, which is our truth, then all judgment is automatically suspended. We no longer need judgment. That's why it would be the last judgment. You are very fearful of everything you have perceived but have refused to accept. You believe that because you have refused to accept it, you have lost control over it, right? That's how we all feel. We feel completely out of control in this illusory world. This is why you see it in nightmares or in pleasant disguises in what seems to be your happier dreams. Nothing that you have refused to accept can be brought into awareness. It is not dangerous in itself, but you have made it seem dangerous to you. Okay, because we're afraid. We're afraid of the truth. We're afraid of God's love. We're afraid of who and what we really are. So we keep running. And the way we run is by projecting, by judging. That's why we think it's dangerous to us, because it is threatening our authority. We want to be the boss. Our ego wants to be the boss, and it doesn't want to be told that it can't be the boss. So it's constantly projecting and judging so that it can keep its authority, its so-called authority, which isn't even real, which is why we're always confused and upset. When you feel tired, it is because you have judged yourself as capable of being tired. When you laugh at someone, it is because you have judged him as unworthy. When you laugh at yourself, you must laugh at others, if only because you cannot tolerate the idea of being more unworthy than they are. All this makes you feel tired because it is essentially disheartening. You are not really capable of being tired, but you are very capable of wearying yourself. The strain of constant judgment is virtually intolerable. Okay, so he's explaining to us all the very silly things we do to try to make our false world real. And in the meantime, it's exhausting, it's disheartening, it's not even what we really want. And I'm just going to point out as a total side note, having nothing to do with this chapter, I am very sensitive to sunlight. So you'll see I'll probably be continuously squinting throughout this video. But I'm going to point this out because it is a symbol within my illusion of how my ego, the ego I, the one that thinks it's Brianna, it's a separate being, that I am afraid of light. Okay, my eyes are constantly squinting and not allowing the light to come in. Now, in the world of form, you could say, oh, it's because I have blue eyes and they're more sensitive and so on and so forth. Yes, we can explain it away. But everything here in this illusory world is a symbol coming from truth. So the truth is that my ego is afraid of light. My ego is my body, right? Bodies aren't real. We are not really our bodies. So the symbol of my ego, my body, has convinced itself that it's incapable of completely opening up, meaning my eyes, to the light. It's just a symbol. I just wanted to explain that as a side note. And then every time I open the book, the light is reflecting off of the pages, which makes me squint even more. Okay. It is curious that an ability so debilitating, meaning judging and how it's disheartening and how we get tired from it, would be so deeply cherished. He's pointing out how much we cherish our judging and our projecting, which actually keeps us miserable. So that's why he's saying it's curious that an ability so debilitating would be so deeply cherished. This is another Jesus joke. He tells many jokes throughout this course. Yet if you wish to be the author of reality, you will insist on holding on to judgment. You will also regard judgment with fear, believing that it will someday be used against you. This belief can exist only to the extent that you believe in the efficacy of judgment as a weapon of defense for your own authority. So he's just pointing out the silly games that we play here. We think we're projecting onto others to relieve ourselves of our own unconscious guilt that we're not even aware of. We're projecting onto others because in that moment it's like, you feel better, right? It's their fault. It's their fault. You feel better. But the truth is that judgment of the others, because the others are really you, it makes you feel bad. And then you feel bad all over again, and then you desire to project it out all over again so that you don't have to deal with the guilt that you are feeling. And this is the sick system that Jesus is pointing out to us here that we do. And it's also why he's making jokes and laughing at us, because it's insane. And we don't even have to do it. He's telling us all along the truth is right here for us. We don't have to do all of this hiding and projecting and judging that we keep doing. But the reason we keep doing it, he's saying, is because we want to have our own authority. We want to be the boss, not God. We don't want anyone having any authority over us. Our ego, this is what our ego desires. God offers only mercy. Your words should reflect only mercy because this is what you have received and that is what you should give. All right, so when he says things like this, don't take it literally as far as your behavior. Remember, he's told us in a previous section that our behavior is not what matters. It's which teacher we are choosing. So when it says your words should reflect only mercy, it means mercy on the one us, okay? Knowing that the one us is really the one child of God. It's about knowing in our mind. It's about giving the mercy in our mind, in our perception, not your behavior of how you're acting in the world each day. And when you do choose the correct teacher, when you are choosing Holy Spirit as your guide, your behavior will end up being merciful. You don't have to decide what that means or how to act or behave. Spirit will guide you. Justice is a temporary expedient or an attempt to teach you the meaning of mercy. It is judgmental only because you are capable of injustice, right? So we only need these little fixes within our illusory world because we think we're here and we think it's real, but it's not. We don't even need any of these tools if we were already awakened. We only need these pretend symbols while we're here to help us perceive correctly. And finally, have the last judgment and perceive correctly permanently. I have spoken of different symptoms, and at that level, there is almost endless variation. There is, however, only one cause for all of them: the authority problem. This is the root of all evil. Every symptom the ego makes involves a contradiction in terms, because the mind is split between the ego and the Holy Spirit, so that whatever the ego makes is incomplete and contradictory. All right, all fancy words to mean you have two choices, ego or spirit. That's it. Those are your two choices. The issue of authority is really a question of authorship. When you have an authority problem, it is always because you believe you are the author of yourself and project your delusion onto others. When we believe that we are a separate ego and so is everyone else, and that we are the author of our own self, we get to make our own decisions, we are deciding who we are, we have an authorship problem, right? Because who's the real author? God, source. That's the real author, but we're fighting that tooth and nail because we want to be the boss. Our ego wants to be the boss. That is our authority problem. You then perceive the situation as one in which others are literally fighting for your authorship, right? When we think that other people are trying to boss us around and tell us what to do. I'm laughing because that's very me. My ego very much identifies with that. This is the fundamental error of all those who believe they have usurped the power of God, right? We want to believe that we have overridden God's power, but we have not. This belief is very frightening to them, but that hardly troubles God, right? So even though we want to be the boss, we want to say we're in control, it also terrifies us because then guess what? We're in control and we're responsible for everything. Uh-oh, that sounds really scary, right? So he's explaining how silly it is, this choice we keep making in our mind. But then he tells us this hardly troubles God. He is, however, eager to undo it, not to punish his children, but only because he knows it makes them unhappy. This is all metaphor, okay? When it says it hardly troubles God, it means that, it would trouble him a little bit. No, it doesn't trouble him at all because he doesn't even know about this world because it doesn't even exist. Okay, so that's metaphor. And when it says he's eager to undo it because he knows it makes us unhappy, again, this is metaphor. God does not know that we're here. We wouldn't ever want God to know that we're here because there is no here. We don't want God perceiving something other than oneness and the eternal extension of love, which is what God is, which is what we are. We don't want God to stop being that, right? It would never happen anyway. It's not possible. But here he's using metaphor. He speaks to us as if we're tiny children because when we are lost in our ego identification, we are behaving like silly, tiny children. So he has to talk to us that way to reach us on our level, our illusory level. God's creations are given their true authorship, but you prefer to be anonymous when you choose to separate yourself from your author. right? Fancy words to mean that we just are constantly trying to forget who we really are and who our parent really is, which is God. This leaves you in a position where it sounds meaningful to believe that you created yourself. The dispute over authorship has left uncertainty in your mind that it may even doubt whether you really exist at all. Okay, we're so confused. And we just go in these circles constantly. Only those who give over all desire to reject can know their own rejection is impossible. You have not usurped the power of God, but you have lost it. Okay, it's not possible to usurp the power of God. As much as we want to believe that we have, as much as we're constantly trying to do it in our illusory world, in this dream that we're having, it's not possible. But he's saying we have lost it. Fortunately, to lose something does not mean that it has gone. It merely means that you do not remember where it is. Its existence does not depend on your ability to identify it or even place it. It is possible to look on reality without judgment and merely know that it is there. Okay, so first he's explaining to us that we don't need to know about truth for it to be true. And just because we're not perceiving it doesn't mean it went away. It didn't go away. It's always there for us. And then he's reminding us that it is possible for us to look on reality without judgment and to merely know that it is there. Peace is a natural heritage of spirit. Everyone is free to refuse to accept his inheritance, but he is not free to establish what his inheritance is. Okay, so spirit, which is what we really are, is our inheritance, and just because we choose to not perceive it doesn't mean that it's not real. He's telling us it is real, whether we perceive it or not, and it's just waiting there for us to perceive it. The problem everyone must decide is the fundamental question of authorship. All fear comes ultimately and sometimes by the way of very devious routes from the denial of authorship. The offense is never to God, but only to those who deny him. Okay? So no matter how hard we try to usurp the power of God, no matter how hard we try to claim that we created ourselves, it doesn't stop the truth from being true, which is none of that is true, and that God is the one who created us and that we are one with God. And the only power that we have is to deny that truth to ourselves. That's our only power. Not to make the truth go away or for the truth to be untrue, but to simply deny our perception of it. To deny his authorship is to deny yourself the reason for your peace, so that you see yourself only in segments. This strange perception is the authority problem. Okay, so thinking that everyone and everything in the multiverse is a separate segment. This is the strange way that we are seeing things, Jesus is telling us. And that this very strange perception is the authority problem. There is no one who does not feel that he is imprisoned in some way. Okay? Every single person in this illusory world who appears to be here in a body feels imprisoned. If this is the result of his own free will, he must regard his will as not free. Or the circular reasoning in this position would be quite apparent. More jokes from Jesus to explain how we go in these silly circles over and over and over again. This is the circular reasoning that he is pointing out to us. Free will must lead to freedom. Judgment always imprisons because it separates segments of reality by the unstable scales of desire. Okay, desire comes from a belief in lack. All right, that's false. Believing that we are separate segments, right? Different people out there, different things, different beings. That's false. And judgment imprisons, is what he's telling us. As soon as we judge, we are imprisoning ourselves and whoever we are judging. And the reason we're doing that is because we believe in lack, which is why we have desires, okay? And all of that is coming from the false world. It's not true. The very next thing he tells us is that wishes are not facts. To wish is to imply that willing is not sufficient. Yet no one in his right mind believes that what is wished is as real as what is willed. All right, so he's describing the difference between wishing for something and simply willing something to happen, because we forgot how powerful we are. Instead of, and he puts in quotes, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, okay, that's from the Bible, say instead, will ye first the kingdom of heaven. And you have said, okay, this is the translation of what that means, will ye first the kingdom of heaven, means, I know what I am and I accept my own inheritance. So that's it. That's the purpose of this course, to know who and what we really are, which is one with God, one with one another, only in beingness, eternally extending love.